Good afternoon, everybody. It's Toby King here from Freeformers. How are we all doing on this lovely Thursday afternoon? And welcome to our first ever live stream. What on earth does esports have to do with the world of work? It's pretty much the most consistent question I've had since we announced the partnership a couple of weeks ago. Like, what on earth are you doing? What's it all about? And that's what this live stream is here for, is to answer some of your questions. So welcome to everybody who's tuning in from at home or at work or wherever in the world you are. And I'd just like to get a sense of where everyone in the world is. So if you are watching and you have the ability to use your keyboard and talk to me, because this isn't a Zoom call, I'd like you just to tell me where in the world you're joining us from. So if you could type in chat, let me know that you're watching. Let me know where you're streaming me to and from. No, I'm from South Norfolk. That's where I am. I am based in Diss, which that's why this sign is here. This is approximately, 3 miles that way. I'm not going to give you any more detail than that because otherwise you get to know where I live and I don't want everyone to know where I live. So like I say, welcome to the stream. If you could say in comments where in the world you are joining us from, that would be lovely. Nobody's done it yet. Oh, there we go. Jen is coming from the Wiz, which is, I believe, Scouse for the Wirral. Just lots of different things come up into my head when I think that. Amsterdam, we've got someone from Amsterdam. In my feed, it is saying you are called LinkedIn user. So I will have to check in. It's James, it's Molky is joining us. And we've got Mike. Mike is 18 miles up the road from me. Hello, Mike. Thank you for joining us. Alan is joining us from Central London. Welcome, Alan. Jen is now just having a private conversation with James, so that's lovely as well. And Paul is joining us from Brighton. Emily, my business partner from Oxfordshire. That's good that she's joined. I'd be a bit worried if Emily hadn't joined. In fact, what I can do is just give you a quick look. If you can't see the chat, you can have a little look at the chat there as well. Look, so we've got lots of people from all over the world to join us on the live stream today. So thank you very much for joining us. And of course, you may be watching this on catch up, as you may call it if you're watching something on the iPlayer. So you can watch this on catch up. We will make the recording available. But to the task at hand, we are here to establish what esports has to do with the world of work. And for a number of years now, we've been concerned with how people operate in the digital space. And of course, the pandemic forced a lot of that to happen. We all went fully remote. And as we now see, for varying different reasons, people are being asked back into the office. But what we've observed in terms of the world of work is that this is a trend because we haven't really designed what a fully remote or hybrid workplace looks like. And that's because we kind of don't have the social skills to operate in a fully digital world. However, there are some people in society that have figured that out, how to fully create a community and a followership and conversation online way better than any leader or any person in the world of work. And we've seen them, we've talked to them, and they are in the world of esports. So we kind of look at influencers, content creators, and streamers are the very best people at creating these communities, creating conversation and content that inspires a followership. And I had a conversation last week that looked at what is that difference? And the real difference in leadership styles here is that with a leader in an organization gets handed a followership. You're in a leadership position now, here's some followers, make them follow you. On social media, on Twitch, on YouTube, on TikTok, whatever, you start with zero. You have to craft that followership. You have to craft your leadership style. And therefore, as a consequence, there are so many people out there who have figured this out already and how you do this in a digital space, and they're making money from it as well. So what we want to be able to do is translate some of those skills that esports content creators have and translate that into the workplace. And I'm very excited to introduce our guest, which is Jake Gent. I will bring him on stage in a second. Jake is an incredible person. I first heard him speak at Carrow Road, which is where Norwich City play. I first heard him speak at a business networking event about 1J Esports, the esports team that is part of Norwich City Football Club. And he was absolutely incredible. It's kind of an untapped market. When we think about everyone in the world of work, the knowledge and resource in this industry alone is completely untapped. And so Jake's going to talk to us a little about what esports is and some of the skills that content creators have in that space. And what I will tell you, because I did promise Jake I would tell everybody this, Jake is not a content creator himself. Okay, he manages the content creators and the competitive esports players that are part of 1J Esports. So don't go and we can follow Jake on social media if you want, but actually we'll be talking about the kind of talent that Jake works with. So without further ado, Jake, hello. How you doing?
Hello. All good, thank you. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries. It's my pleasure. Ever since I saw you speak last year, it's been my mission to get you live on LinkedIn, and here we are. So, what's going to be the first question? Jake, what is esports?
So yeah, esports is kind of a subsection of a wider industry, probably known as gaming. So esports actually stands for electronic sports and kind of brings in a competitive side to gaming. So similar to what you would have within football, you have millions of people play football around the world, amateur. You have the competitive side of it with professional players. It's the same within esports. So you'll have gamers, millions of people play games, and then a subsection of those will be esports professionals who actually compete professionally within different games.
And this is no small competition, is it, that we're talking about? The size of the prizes available for this job, essentially, in the future world of work is pretty astronomical, right?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, the gaming industry as a whole is massive. It's far bigger than the film and music industries, which I think a lot of people probably don't realize. I think it's projected to reach about 280 billion this year in terms of a value just for gaming as a whole. And then esports as a subsection of that worldwide kind of audience size within esports is worth about 600 million. So the prize pools that come with that are huge. There's recently been an event and a tournament announced called the Esports World Cup, which will take place in July in Saudi Arabia. Prize pools across all of those events will reach over $60 million. So a lot of money involved within esports, yeah.
And that's kind of just one part of what you do with 1J Esports as well. So there's the competitive gaming, but also there is the content creator side as well, which kind of sit together, right? They're two different things, but kind of share that knowledge. What's the difference between like a competitive gamer and a content creator in your world?
Yeah, so as you say, they kind of sit together. You've got the competitive side of it, which comes within esports, and then the content creation tends to be more apparent for a casual audience. So as I said, the wider gaming audience are mostly made up of a casual player and a casual viewer. So that's where a content creator will find most of their audience. There's quite a lot of overlap between the two. We work with a lot of our esports players, so the competitive players, on their content and how they can actually develop content and create content for an audience as well. It gives them kind of a niche on what they can do as well. If they're a competitive player, they can give tips quite well on how to get better at the game, which a lot of casual players will want to watch. So yeah, there's kind of a split between the two in terms of esports and content, but then they kind of collide and work together at the same time.
That's very cool. And we'll talk about tips later on, because obviously if anybody follows 1J Esports on Instagram and TikTok, a lot of it is the reason I follow 1J Esports on TikTok and Instagram is because it gives me tips on how to play EAFC 24, because I'm rubbish at it. I'm 36, like I'm over the hill. My reaction times are nowhere near as good as anybody in their 20s or late teens, right? So they're very useful tips on how to hack play an FC 24. But so we've talked about like the almost the revenue an individual can get from winning an esports tournament. What does that look like for a content creator then?
Yeah, so for a content creator, a lot of that is more generated themselves. So what they do is they'll build their following, they'll build their channels, and then they'll be able to monetize that. So it will come from different platforms. Twitch revenue is one. So when they're live streaming, they'll make a percentage of subscription revenue depending on who subs to their channel. So obviously the more subscribers they have, the more money they make. There's ads revenue within YouTube. So the more views they get on a video, the more money they make from that. There's a new fund within TikTok. So the TikTok Creator Fund. So only available in the UK, US, and a few other countries at the minute. But creators are able to make money on TikTok based on posting their videos. So it works on kind of a value per view on what they got on their videos. TikTok specifically, it has to be over a minute long for them to qualify for that. And then they can start to make money through their social channels as well. Alongside that, a lot of them will have a salary paid from working with an organization. Same with an esports player. esports players, most of their income will come from a salary to be signed to an organisation or team, and then the prize pool is kind of an added bonus as and when they're able to win.
It's crazy that I go back to what you said earlier, right? That it's bigger than the music and film industry. But when you watch any sort of news or any content feed, we'll always talk about film celebrities, musicians. You can't move for Taylor Swift at the moment and Beyonce. But actually, in terms of the size of the market, esports is absolutely massive, but kind of just flies under the radar. Why do you think that is?
I think partly because it's still quite a new industry. It's still kind of developing as an industry. There's obviously a lot less regulation within it than there is within traditional sports. So it's still kind of growing and developing and kind of sort of settling into what it is as an industry. That's the esports side of it. The wider gaming industry has been around for a lot longer. So that's why we see that being worth much more, being much bigger, having much more kind of an audience. Esports is still relatively new, so it's still kind of setting a structure around it.
Oh, nice. We've got a question from Paul, actually, and I know that Paul is a Brighton fan and is on his way to the game tonight. Paul asks, are there transfers between esports teams?
Yes, simple answer is yes, there is. Players, so there's different games within esports. So esports isn't just one game. There's, I think, 100 plus different games that people can actually compete in. Some will be team-based and some will be individual-based. What a lot of the time will happen, if it's a team-based, a team will stay together and they'll transfer to a different roster. Sometimes individuals will be signed, but yeah, there's transfers between the teams. So either a player will have a contract with the team that'll expire and then they'll move to another team, or they have kind of not buyouts, but ways for them to be able to pay to have a player from that team. So similar to football, you'll have transfers where a team will pay one team to acquire another player. On top of that, there's even loans within esports. So similar to football, where you can loan a player, that happens within esports. When we won the E-Premier League as Norwich City in 2021, one of the players who won it for us was on loan from another esports team. So that even happens as part of it as well.
That's mental. Mike's also asked a question, which I'm going to come back to in a minute, Mike. So do bear with us, caller. We will answer your questions, and that's a good point. If anybody does have any questions they want to ask, please put them in chat. We're going to put a little QR code up in the corner very soon as well. So if you actually want to join us live on our stream, you can do so. In fact, you know what? Let's pop it there now. Look, I'm on the wrong side here as well. I'm going to bring myself. There you go. Now I can point at it. I knew I was going to get that wrong. It's there. If you want to join us, Mike, if you want to join us, right? If you want to ask your question, if you want your question answered, you're going to have to scan this QR code, buddy, and join us on our stream. Okay. We will answer your question, even if you don't want to join us on our stream. But best on a mobile device, my friend. So 1J Esports, is it quite a new thing? Has it been around a while? How did the whole concept of 1J Esports start?
Yeah, so it was launched back in September 2021, so 2.5 years, just over now. So which seems like a while, but it's actually not that long. Technically, it's a standalone business alongside Norwich City Football Club. So kind of came about. My role at Norwich City Football Club before this had absolutely nothing to do with esports and gaming whatsoever. It was I started off working on kind of memberships, experiences, junior development for the football club. A big part of my role was on junior development and how, as a football club, we could better engage with younger fans. A lot of research was kind of done at that time on what younger people engage with. We obviously found that gaming was a big element to that. Social media channels, TikTok, etc., were a big element to that. So we decided to launch our own esports and gaming team off the back of that. The main reason initially was just to try and engage with younger Norwich fans, but since that launch, it's kind of taken off, and we're now in a position where we've been running 1J Esports for 1.5 years. We've won the E-Premier League in our first year. We're up to about 550,000 followers across all of our channels now, averaging around about 15 million views a month on them. So it's kind of, really taken off in the last couple of years.
And that's really interesting, right? So it's primarily like driven out of youth engagement. And if we think about the world of work, with quite broad strokes, you have a leadership team that is probably slightly older than people entering the world of work for the very first time. And what we've kind of got are these two very, very different styles that, 40, 50 plus who may be in a leadership position, C-suite position, organization, have probably grown up knowing all about in-person leadership. I'm in the office, I can demonstrate leadership skills in person really easily. That's the bread and butter. We've grown up on that. But we've got an emerging generation coming into the workforce, or two generations. Gen Alpha will be here soon, but Gen Z is here already. And they're used to kind of getting their culture defined by content creators, right? So in the same way the football club kind of went, how do we engage, younger generations? Workforces are kind of having to go through that same, I kind of call it pain, because it's like they've not done it before. They've not had to engage these people in a completely different way. And I think the other cool thing is, or the interesting thing is, that then those emerging generations maybe don't appreciate the in-person stuff as much as well. So there's this kind of halfway house where these older generations have got to appreciate that the way younger generations engage with the world is a lot different, but also vice versa, that there kind of has to be this middle ground. Mike's joined us. I'm going to bring Mike. He's smiling as well. We can see him in the back. Hello, Mike. Let's bring him on. Hello, buddy. How you doing?
I'm good. Wow, that is some bright lighting I have got going on.
What kind of lighting are you lighting yourself with?
This is full blown fluorescence that I've gone for.
Are you at a school?
This is the meeting room in my office. Look, there's a seagull and everything. So I'm joining the stream. I did not think I'd be doing this.
I know you didn't. I kind of forced you into it. Thank you very much for joining the stream. Mike, you asked a question and you get to ask it to Jake direct because you're on stage with us.
So I was going to ask if you think the Western market is finally catching up with the global market when it comes to esports.
Yeah, so I think there's looking at kind of regions that are big within esports. US is still the main one. It's kind of growing a lot within Asian regions as well. But we're actually seeing, I think, out of kind of regions, Germany and the UK are 4th and 5th in the list in terms of countries engaging in esports and kind of the audience with it. So we're seeing it, kind of be a lot more present across different regions as well now.
I was going to ask you a HR question to go with this as well, then, to keep it on message, on brand. In terms of the younger audience and obviously what we're seeing with the growth of the betting market around esports, how are you protecting and safeguarding the younger generation from that? The biggest one being obviously Kick has now been launched as a streaming platform by a major betting corporation to take on Twitch, which removed it. How do you think the industry is catching up with people in their kind of late teens, early 20s being subject to these massive betting markets?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one that a lot of people are wary of at the minute. So there's a lot of kind of brands that we're chatting to at the minute that are wanting to target and ensuring that they can target an over 18 audience. So a lot of what we do is around looking at the creators we work with and ensuring that a certain percentage of their audience is over 18 to ensure that we can actually target them with that sort of thing. We tend to look at, we want to be about 90% and above of over 18s to be able to target things like that. It's also probably worth noting that the football industry, for example, is still betting plastered all over it. And we know how young fans are quite impressionable with that. What a lot of those teams and clubs will do is, I certainly experienced at Norwich, is anyone under the age of 18 obviously can't buy a kit with a betting sponsor on. They have to have a different sponsor on their kit. So they try and kind of safeguard it in those sorts of ways, which happens similarly to within esports. So any event where an under 18 is participating, they aren't able to wear anything or have any representation within betting while they're competing. So there's kind of things that are transferring across from the wider football industry to esports as well.
And is that the same with betting education as well? Like it's happening across professional footballers at a younger age, being formed about, the dangers of betting and the addictive nature, all those bits and pieces that are now weren't in play when it was Paul Merson and Tony Adams, to age myself massively there.
Yeah, it's the same thing. There's all of that sort of education piece with young people that are sort of starting careers within esports around the betting industry. And obviously we know it's prominent within esports. Esports betting is one of the biggest kind of growths within esports recently. So we know it's big. There are a lot of games that don't actually allow it whatsoever. So within the AFC, for example, there is no betting sponsors allowed. There's only actually, I think, two or three at the minute. It might open up to a couple more, but League of Legends and Counter-Strike and Dota are the only ones that are really allowing anything within betting sponsors at the minute. So I think it's something that publishers are quite wary of as well.
Mike, I gotta say, you're going. Are you? The light is doing wonders for your complexion, mate. So whatever you're doing, I like. Keep it up, Mike. Thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I'm going to throw you off now. I'm going to throw you off the stream. Bye bye.
Hey.
Cheers to Mike there. And again, the QR code is just here. If anybody wants to join the live stream, please do so. So let's now look at these kind of transferable skills. So we've established that esports is a huge market. We've understood that, in terms of followership and engaging an audience, there's almost nobody better, right? Because the size of the prize in terms of the market value exceeds, music and film. So whilst Taylor Swift is over here making an absolute fortune in terms of fan engagement, ticket revenue, merchandise, and all that kind of stuff, there is kind of just like other people doing kind of similar stuff without it ever being, presented into the bigger, wider world, if you like. So if we think about, let's first of all, let's give some names to the people you work with. Who are the content creators, Jake, that you work with that we should all be following on socials?
Yeah, so the two that we have within 1J Esports are Chris O'Gara, better known as the Gara Show on all socials, and Rocco, or Rocco's 11 on all socials. They're both EAFC content creators. So obviously what we do at 1J Esports is wholly focused on EAFC, given the link to the football club. So they're both EAFC content creators that will put out videos weekly, 4 or 5 videos a week. They'll stream pretty much every day on their Twitch channels as well. Chris, we started working with probably 2 years ago now, coming up to 2 years. I think it was in March 2022. We signed him as one of our first content creator actually at the time. So kind of our initial strategy started out as being a focus on esports. So we started with professional players and we wanted to really do well within esports. We kind of soon learned within the space of 6 months that actually the audience that we were building wasn't as focused on esports. It was a much wider audience. It was a much more casual audience. So having a content creator kind of allowed us to reach that audience at the same time. So that's kind of why we brought Chris on. I think when we first signed him, he was at around about 100,000 followers across all of his channels. I've worked quite closely with him. He's done a great job himself of growing those channels. He's now up over 700,000 followers across all of his channels. So he's doing really well. And as you'll see, if you watch any of his content, it's very energetic, very engaging, and you can see why he's built up such a big audience from it. And then kind of Rocco on the other hand, on the other side of it, he's up at around 350,000 followers now across all of his channels. Has a really big streaming audience, so he'll stream to over 100 plus people every time he streams, and his content is all focused on what he does within the game, so opening packs and trying to engage people in what he's doing.
And that's the interesting thing I find is there are some direct correlation. Is like both of them are kind of showing other people like what they do, and ultimately when you get to the world of work, that's kind of the thing that most organizations are quite bad at. It's like sharing like how they're actually doing stuff and cross-pollinating all this knowledge, and straight out of the gate these guys are doing it across their socials because it's part of what they do. And I think if you give some of that to leaders or even people who are aspiring leaders in organizations, the ability to create engaging content about doing stuff, that's really impactful. Now whether it's going to be as exciting as opening a gold pack on FC24, who knows? But there's got to be that almost that conscious effort to make the content as engaging as possible and try and get it to that point. We've just had somebody else join us, although they've dropped their phone on the floor. No, there they are. I can see their face. Oh, it's Jen. Hello, Jen. We're going to bring Jen on in a second. Hold right there. We will bring you on. So Chris is the guy who's going to run the Freeformers and 1J Esports program that we've designed together called Leading with Influence, a 4-week program where Chris essentially shares all of his knowledge and skills on both content creation and live streaming. And we help translate that into the world of work. So whether you're a business leader or a thought leader on LinkedIn, it's bringing in those skills of someone who's got hundreds of thousands of followers and trying to build either that following on LinkedIn or in your workplace. Why is Chris so good at it?
So I mean, there's multiple things that go into it really from Chris. There's first, it's probably the brand that he's been able to build. So I think it's really important with content creators that they have a recognizable brand for themselves. So, and that's kind of consistent across all of their channels. Similar to how a business would want a brand, they want a tone of voice, they want to be consistent. It's very similar for a content creator. They need to have something that identifies them and something that they're kind of known for as a bit of a niche within the scene. There's obviously so many content creators that they really need to be able to pinpoint what it is they bring and what their audience is going to watch them for. Alongside that, it's kind of that audience engagement and that community building. So Chris will do a lot of streams where he gets his viewers and things involved. So he'll play pro clubs and he'll have viewers come in and play with him. So things that he can do to help build that community by getting people involved and engaged in what he's doing is a big help. And then probably lastly is understanding the social media platforms and the algorithms that are built in behind them to make sure his content performs as well as it can. Like I've worked with Chris for years now, and he's very meticulous in looking into algorithms. He probably spends hours doing it. I'd get bored, but he spends hours doing it, where he's looking into what the algorithm is looking for within a video and then tailoring his videos to that. So TikTok's a great example. Within TikTok, you're aiming to have everyone watch at least the first 3 seconds of your video. And if that happens, people are more likely to watch the rest of the video. So he's very keen, and it's certainly something we've implemented across our 1J Esports channels as well, is ensuring that first 3 seconds of the video catches someone's attention and they continue to watch, which is something Chris is really good at.
And I think that's some of the amazing stuff he brings to the program, right? It's because there isn't an algorithm to content creating inside a workplace, because it's a finite audience. But actually, even knowing the mechanics of what drives engagement, that if you're going to make a video for your people in your workplace or on LinkedIn, hitting that 3 second mark to make sure you get them is really, really important. We're going to talk more about Chris in a second, because he's amazing. But another amazing person that I want to join on stage with us, on the stream, is Jen from The Wiz. Jen, hello, Jen. How are you?
Hello, Toby. I'm good, thank you. And hi, Jake. Nice to meet you.
Hey, yeah.
I have a question, which is kind of, I'm bringing it back to, I guess, like the wider world of work. One of the big reasons I think that a lot of people are going back to the office is obviously like the sense of community, the sense of togetherness. People's mental health maybe dipped a little bit when they were working from home. I work from home permanently most of the time, so it's kind of normal for me. But I know a lot of people struggled with the lack of community, and I would imagine that that's something that your content creators may potentially struggle with, like a bit of a lonely life, you know, making all this amazing online content, but actually not getting in rooms with people, or getting to have that social interaction except through a screen. So I was wondering, is there anything that you do that you think would be applicable to the wider world of work in terms of building like good communities of practice and safeguarding the mental health and the well-being of the people who actually contribute the content for your channels? And if so, like, how can other companies pick that up and run with it so they don't have to just drag everybody back to the office because they think it's better for people?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's probably worth noting, first of all, that our team is made up from all across the country. So Chris is based in Ireland. James, or Rocco, as I mentioned, is based near Birmingham. We've got Alfie in Nottingham, Jack in Wigan, Luke in Norwich. So literally spread across many miles. So we don't get an opportunity to be together in person very often. What we try to do is we'll have probably a quarterly content day where we'll get everyone together. We'll hire out a venue. We'll stay for a couple of days. We'll capture content to use across our channels, and we'll just get a chance to kind of spend some time together. That's an important aspect of what we do. But alongside that, it's more about the regular communication between the team. So there's a big social channel used predominantly within gaming. You would have heard of it, but Discord is used a lot within gaming. That's something we use to communicate with all the players. So we'll not only have kind of a weekly catch up where we'll chat about things, but there's also that kind of constant communication between the team within those channels. Alongside that, we'll host kind of recording sessions with each of them every week. So we'll set aside a couple of hours every week to jump on a Discord call with them, to record videos, to record some clips, and just to kind of genuinely chat as well at the same time. So a lot of them tend to end up lasting too long probably, because we end up just chatting and catching up on things that we can do to help them grow as well. So all of that kind of really helps them to try and to stay connected to everything that's going on. It's probably also worth noting that they have a lot of groups, even though they're gamers and they'll probably spend a lot of their time at home gaming. They'll have a lot of groups with other competitive gamers as well, where they'll practice together. So they'll never really be just sat at their home practicing on their own or focus on what they're doing themselves. There's always a connection with other people within the industry that they'll spend time practicing and playing with.
There's a couple of interesting things there. So practicing like gaming, but they do it as a social. Like very rarely in the world of work do we do the work whilst kind of being in each other's spheres. Like you get on, you have the meeting, you get off. And I think the other thing you mentioned was that you have that informal chat. So it should have been an hour, but it lasted 2, or it was supposed to be 2 hours, it lasted 3. You allow yourself to have those informal conversations, which I don't know, organizations I've worked with and for, right? That meeting in, meeting out, we don't have informal conversations. One thing, Emily, who I work with, calls it culture building. And I take the mick out of her slightly when she calls it culture building, but it's really, really important. And I think we don't really appreciate it until you do it and you kind of allow yourself to have that informal conversation. The thing we don't do, although we have found a really cool tool that allows you to do it, is to do some work, typing, drawing, whatever, whilst you've kind of got some people connected, through microphones and cameras. Really great tool that Kirsty Baggs Morgan actually introduced us to. If you know her, follow her. She's really cool. But introduced a Flow Club. And essentially it connects you to, it's like chat roulette, but there's less of what you usually find on chat roulette. It allows you to find people who also want to do an hour of work, and you can kind of connect with them and say, I'm going to do this in the next hour, and I really, really want to achieve this. And then you check out at the end. And you just meet random people. So even if you're in a smaller company that's just 1 or 2, what we found is that's a really cool tool to use. But as we work with larger organizations, certainly it's that opportunity to, I suppose, include those 2 things in your working routine is really interesting. Apologies, Jen, I butted in with some waffle. Is there anything else you need to ask Jake?
No, that was a great answer. And I also think it's really interesting that you go to where they are on Discord as well, rather than kind of implementing, a more corporate like Slack or Teams or whatever. You've actually gone, why would we even make them leave where they are? Like, let's go get them there and build communities where there are already communities in existence. So I think that's probably a big lesson that like the wider corporate world can learn as well. So no, great answer. Thank you.
And I imagine most of the HR and learning people will now have to go and look at what Discord is because they have no idea. Do go and check out Discord. I'm a member of a few Discord channels, and honestly, you can lose your mind in some of them. Some of them are really good. Jen, thank you very much for joining us from The Wiz. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye. So for those of you who don't know, like Discord is essentially, it's like Slack, right? But people use it in a completely different way. And it's just a lot. I don't know. I find Slack's a bit more corporate now. I know Slack a couple of years ago was like startups are all using it. It's the cool place to be, all that kind of stuff. And now it seems that, especially as those younger generations are moving towards Discord and being even understanding that, because that isn't about, recorded content or even live streaming. That is about everything you said, is about having that chat in the flow of work. People are now doing it in a different way. So when they get to work and they're expected to use Microsoft Teams, which is very different and not as good, you're almost having to relearn digital communication skills. So how many of you are on your Discord, and is it just for internal use, or do you use it for external stuff as well? So
we have a 1J Esports Discord, which is within Discord, what you can do is you can have channels that are private and channels that are open. So we'll have the open channels that when we run events and whatever, then anyone can come in and chat. And then we'll have the private ones with just us and the team where we can communicate. So within that, there'll be a chat for us to obviously speak. There's a recording room. There's a chat room. So we can just jump in a call on a Discord quite quickly and quite easily. I think it was a good point that it's very different to kind of Slack and Teams and Google Meet. Like when we started to do this, I didn't really know or use Discord that much myself, coming from more the kind of football club side of things. When I first started to speak to some of these players and the creators that we're working with, and I was sending them Google or Microsoft Teams invites, they were like, what the hell is this? I don't know how to use this. So we quickly had to kind of develop what we were doing and take what we do across to their channels. And Discord allows you to do basically everything that Teams and Google Meet, etc., will do as well. So we can have a call where we're chatting to each other with the cameras on. We can share screens. You can actually share screens direct to a console. So a lot of it will be used for training purposes within gameplay. So I'll jump on a call with one of the players and they'll be playing the game, and we can chat through and talk about what they're doing within the game at the same time. So there's loads of uses for it.
I was on mute. That's really cool. And I think, like I say, that's kind of all this stuff is baked into our Leading with Influence program that we've co-designed together. And it's like, even I, in just like designing it with you guys, have learned so much about what I could be doing, even being here today on a live stream rather than a Zoom call, because let's face it, no one's got on a Zoom call and got really excited about it, but live streaming and being able to have these conversations is really cool. So if you want to know more about what we're doing with kind of content creators and influencers here at Freeformers, there is the QR code there. So scan that. That'll take you to a link just so you can have a look at the stuff we're doing. Just in chat, Jake, just going to bring up a couple of comments that you might be interested in. There's a young chap by the name of Lewis who's asked if it's true if you named 1J Esports after yourself.
Unfortunately not. No, I kind of wish I had have done, but no, it's actually named after the postcode at Norwich City Football Club. So the postcode at Carrow Road is NR1 1JE, which is then where 1J Esports comes from. So yeah, unfortunately not 1J Esports.
That is a shame. And whilst we have those captions, Emily celebrated her 100th Flow Club the other day. So if you haven't seen Flow Club, again, do check it out. We'll get rid of the chat. And Emily is with us now. I'm going to bring Emily onto the screen. Hello, Emily.
Hello. I have a very on-brand question for you, I think, Jake, which is all about data and insight. So in the world of sports and football and sports in general, data is really important. It's used all the time just to analyze what can be improved. So I'm interested in knowing what you do and how you use data and insights to understand your audience, to work out what's performing well, and what other people in the world of work can learn from that.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I use our insights from our social media channels pretty much all the time. So I'll run those analytics. I'll look at the figures that we've got across social channels, and then I'll delve deeper into. There's loads you can actually see within those analytics. So TikTok's a great example. You can see at what time of day your users are online. So we know that at 9 p.m. the majority of our users are online on TikTok. So the best time for us to post a video is 9 p.m. We know kind of what our audience split is, what our age demographics are, so we can kind of tailor our videos to know those. You can even kind of delve deeper into it, especially on YouTube, around sort of viewer retention. So we can see what percentage of our audience watch the first, as I said earlier, like 3 seconds of the video. We know that then if that video performed well, it was because the first 3 seconds were really good and people wanted to watch it. If not, then there was probably something wrong with the intro of that video. So it really helps us kind of shape what content we do and really be able to kind of continually develop the content that we're delivering, so that we're never kind of just standing still. We're always trying to do more to push it to the next level.
That's a great answer. And I came back and I was like, oh, I bet if I use the tool, it will bring me back in the same place I was before, and it hasn't. And now if I put myself here, Jake's going to be in the wrong place. But if I do that,
I can just go. Would that make life easier?
No, it's fine. You stay there. That's cool. We'll just move everybody around. We'll just shuffle everyone around, and then I'll boot you off the screen. Emily, do you have any more questions?
Now you've put me on the spot because we've changed the subject slightly. I think it's really interesting what you said about videos and that kind of thing. Do you use any other kind of data in, I don't know, understanding audience, or even about your people themselves sometimes? I mean, your team?
Yeah. So I'll work with them on their kind of channels and their socials as well. So to try and understand kind of like what they're wanting to deliver and how they're wanting to do it. So a lot of it is more with the team and helping them develop, is more around what they want to achieve and how we can support them on it. So we'll look at, again, similar, if it's a content creator and their objective is to grow their social channels, say Chris, for example, he wants to reach 1 million followers. We'll work with him on how he can reach that. So looking at his analytics and his data from that side and how we can help him to kind of get to that point.
We're just imagining now if people manager, people leader, whatever, line manager took that same approach with their people? Like, what is it you're trying to achieve? Okay, this is your goal. It aligns to our goal, but what we're trying to achieve, how are we going to use data and insights to get there? Imagine a world of that. Be great, wouldn't it, Toby?
It's pretty cool. People should be doing it, and well, that's what we help our clients with. Another thing we help our clients with is to do that, as well as bringing the skills of 1J Esports into the world of work. Emily, you've got one more shot. Do you want a third question, or are you going to go?
No, I'm going to go.
You can say no. It's like you don't have to.
Well, you just kind of put it like I've got to ask another question. Okay, a completely different question.
Okay,
what's the coolest? I'm going to do it. What's the coolest bit of content you've seen created by someone on your team?
That's a very good question. Let me just think. I mean, there's loads that come to mind. Chris, probably. There was a YouTube video he made maybe last year within EAFC where he challenged himself to play a game, and every time he conceded a goal, he was given an electric shock. So quite painful piece of content, but also, as you can imagine, very, very good for an audience to watch, to be engaged with, to find out how he's going to cope with being shocked, how many times he's going to concede, etc.
That's cool. You definitely got to put the link in the chat, Toby, afterwards.
Absolutely. I'm going to hunt that out. Also, in a world where we are also kind of HR and people consultants, I don't know whether electrocuting staff is going to be. Hey, how do we translate that to the world of work, Jake? Leaders should electrocute themselves every time they use a bit of corporate bingo kind of stuff, let's circle back, all that kind of language. They get electrocuted every time they use some of that language. Now that would actually be quite entertaining. Emily, I tend to use that language more than Emily as well, so I think it's me that's going to have to be electrocuted every time I use corporate language. Yeah, fair enough. Emily, appreciate it. I'll speak to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye. Oh, I cut her off when she said thank you. Emily just said thank you, everybody, if you didn't know. Cool. I've got to go back to the questions because we had so many people come and join us, which I wasn't actually expecting. So Chris, as an example, has grown his followership. You said 100,000 when you first started working with him, and now 700,000 on all channels now. He's obviously kind of created his own community then, and if at work we might call that a team. How does he then, when he's not creating content, how does he talk and engage with that audience?
Yeah, so it will be a lot through his social channels. Again, Discord is one I mentioned. He'll have his own Discord server where his kind of viewers and his audience can jump in and chat to him on that. So that'll be a big element to it. Streaming is kind of a big part of it. So when he's live and he's got hundreds of people watching him, there's a chat similar to what we've got here where people will comment and he'll be able to engage. I think a big part of streaming and the best streamers that do it really well are the ones that engage with the chat and the community, and they get them involved in things and they'll respond to the questions that they're asked, etc. And like I said earlier, a lot of what he does actually gets his community involved. So he does a variety stream once a week where he plays kind of an online game which all of his audience can get involved in. So I think he did a horror game a few weeks ago. He sometimes does kind of like a quiz show game, and it just really gets his audience involved in what he's doing, which kind of obviously helps to build the community he's got and allows him to kind of communicate with them as well.
I think that's really interesting if you translate that into a leadership style, right? Getting people that are either in a meeting or whatever at work, virtually is get them involved in it. Too often I've seen meetings being conducted by one or two leaders that essentially just having a conversation with each other while everyone else watches, which is not engaging with everyone. And one of the other programs we've designed, Present with Intent, takes the principles of stand-up comedy to in-person presentation skills. And stand-up comedians tend to use the same thing to get the audience on their side. They go out and they generally ask the people on the front row and get the crowd involved with some of that work. And it's a very human way of delivering information, which most leaders in a virtual environment especially have kind of forgotten, because it's too easy to not appreciate you've got an audience. And the real skill is that if you do it on Zoom, of course, you can see people's faces. I talk about my wife quite a lot in her job. She goes on Zoom calls and no one has their cameras on. which is quite weird to me that still happens. But even if that's the case, as a leader or someone hosting a live stream, being able to, reach out to the audience and pick people out at the right time, either in chat or either in video, as Emily, Jen, and Mike have done, is being able to bring those things in. What I will say very quickly, I can't point at it now because you're on that side of the screen, so I'm going to switch myself over here and point at this. The Leading with Influence program. So if you want to get better at all this stuff, if you want to hear more about Jake, more about Chris, and how to create really great engaging content, our program is here to sign up. So you can, for a £50 deposit today, you can secure your place, right? So we're running this program in June. We've co-designed it with 1J Esports. You're going to get a level of insight that you will not get literally from anywhere else. No one else in the world is doing this, and you will be the very first people to sign up to a pioneering program that takes virtual leadership to a completely new level more than anyone else. So now that's the sales bit done. So scan here, scan here, scan here, scan here. Let's get back to the chat because we have had a comment from Denise. So I will just bring up the chat overlay here so you can have a look at it, Jake. It's saying the comments will be displayed here. That's annoying. Oh, I said new comments. Never mind. So Denise has asked, using a channel that your team are comfortable on is a great tip. But do you think that would work as well for a company with a range of different staff, ages, interests, and experiences? So this is really interesting. So everybody at 1G Esports uses Discord to communicate and collaborate as I keep going up at the end to go higher and higher. What kind of demographics are we talking about in terms of the employee base then at 1J Esports and Epic?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's kind of a similar kind of age range and interest. So we'll have, I think our youngest player is 19 now. Our oldest is probably 30. So probably a lot more closer together in terms of age range than you would get within a lot of businesses. So again, that probably makes it easier for us to communicate on that channel because it's something that they're all comfortable with. It's something that's kind of apparent within gaming as a whole, as an industry, that everyone kind of uses that sort of platform. So it makes it easier for us to communicate along those channels.
And I think it's a really great point. I think something we kind of talked about earlier, that there's kind of two approaches that we certainly take, is that those channels, these emerging channels that those younger generations are using, are not going anywhere. They're kind of here to stay, and they will develop and move. So it's kind of on a leadership team to, even if you're not using them, to at least have an awareness and understanding that your people are. That's on you as a leader to understand the tools and communication methods they use. Also, I think, as we previously mentioned, the younger generations being able to do that in person as well. So you kind of get this middle ground. This is where there's a real conflict in most workplaces at the moment, that the older generations, the younger generations kind of are more comfortable in communicating in two different ways and being able to bridge that gap and bring those to the middle. Not one is better than the other, but it's all about adaptability, right? Can I adapt my digital communication skills to work with a variety of generations and interests? And can I flex my in-person skills to do the same? And like I say, we've got programs to cover both, which is very, very useful. What other questions have we got? So, someone asked before the stream went live, actually, and I think Jen kind of answered it, but you kind of mentioned how you work and how you bring yourselves together as a company. How do what are the in-person experiences like for content creators and streamers? Do they get together in person on their own accord at any point?
Yeah, so they'll, as I mentioned, kind of Discord will be a part of it. They'll all have their own sort of little Discord community of usually other streamers as well. So they'll have their teams and their friends within that kind of industry that they work with, that they kind of all kind of work. It's quite a collaborative effort within content creation. It's very different to other industries where they're not up against each other. They're not fighting for each other's audience. They're working together to kind of grow in general. So they'll have a lot of stuff where they catch up with their friends and the people that they work with in there. There's a lot of kind of events that run where creators can come together. So there's TwitchCon. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but that's probably the biggest one. There's a TwitchCon in the US and a TwitchCon there's a European one, which I think is usually in the Netherlands. So they'll have those where I think the Netherlands one, there was about 15,000 people at last year. So it'll be streamers and content creators from the whole of Europe really that get together in one place to kind of share what they do and to kind of, just get together and spend time with each other.
That's really cool. And I think in everything, to kind of recap everything you talked about, the in-person stuff is like you got to do the in-person stuff, and it's got to matter. It's got to mean something. You can't just, you're not all getting together to sit in an office and have meetings and that kind of stuff. I mean, meetings separate from each other, but you're all meeting together. So you're doing it with intent. And I think that's the other thing that's happened as well with people going back to the office, is it's been done because there's been a need for some reason, and there's been no intent about, okay, if we're all going to go to the office, what are we going to do when we're there to really make the most of this in-person experience? Because it doesn't happen all the time. Even if it only happens once a week, that's still not that frequent to connect with humans in a real place environment. So it's like, what are you doing? How are you designing those days? And I remember last year I was working with a client, and there was a real gap in that we asked leaders and their teams, how often were you in the office? And they both went, about 2 days a week. And you're like, okay, cool. So you guys are hanging out, you're doing stuff. But it transpired, both of them were going in 2 days a week, but on completely different days. So they weren't connected as a team because they didn't really design whatever the virtual, but also the in-person stuff was with intent enough that they were syncing up, which is like, at a very basic level, creating that cadence and that routine to make sure you're all in person. But then to your point, making sure that those are done with intent as well. We've got a couple more questions. Jen has messaged again. I always think as well, ask people where they want to communicate and listen to and act on that. Speaking as a Teams sufferer. Yeah, I'd be interested in chat if anyone is a massive Microsoft Teams advocate. In terms of communicating and collaborating as a channel, it's probably one of the worst. Slack's all right, but I'd be interested to know if anyone really loves Microsoft Teams. I very rarely get people going, oh, you know what? Microsoft Teams is really cool. The thing I will mention, and the emerging technology that came out quite a few years ago now, was Facebook, or Meta, released a workplace version of Facebook. So called Workplace. That was a tool that went out there and you could plug it into your organization, and they brought the social media tool that everyone was used to into the world of work. Now, in a world where Facebook is like, no one uses it. I didn't think anyone used X anymore, but apparently we've got quite a few people watching live on X right now. So maybe I'll reconsider that judgment. But it's being able to bring those things into work. And I think, Facebook did it, or Meta did it with real intent. They developed a specific work platform version of Facebook and made that available. But I think we're seeing a real trend in HR technologies, or people technologies, certainly, where what outside of work looks like, what inside of work looks like, shouldn't really be that different. We're still trying to communicate and collaborate and have conversation in a digital space. And as the reason why we're partnering with you guys is that there are platforms and people way better at doing this stuff outside the world of work. And like I say, I'm not the one delivering this program. We've actually got someone who's got hundreds of thousands of followers delivering the program because they know what they're doing. I just about do, but you've got to learn from some experts. Paul's come up with a good question. I think we'll throw this to both of us, and I'll answer first because I've read it and I've come up with my answer. Jake, I'll give you a couple of seconds to answer. Paul's asked, outside of esports, are there any content creators that you admire and have learned from? There's two. I can't remember the guy's name, and I will put that there is one I've learned from in not what to do, and it's a guy on TikTok who teaches interviewing skills. And honestly, he's the scariest guy I've ever. Yeah, Jake's nodding. If you've seen the bald guy who shouts a lot, I know I shout a lot, but if you've seen the bald guy who shouts a lot across the table, this is how to do an interview. It's like, please just calm down and stop staring at me in that way. I've learned how not to do stuff through him, but then there are people like Cheap Holiday Expert. So she is fantastic, and Miss Excel as well, who recently got engaged. I follow her for Excel tips, and now I'm completely bought into her life. But tips on how to do spreadsheets and hack spreadsheets, and then tips on how to get kind of cheaper deals and holidays and stuff. Like those two are doing some really great stuff with content. And then there's Kia Commodore as well, who does the Pennies to Pound podcast, who is really good in terms of financial education, really important topic. But she's really good at kind of doing holistic kind of followership. What about yourself, Jake? Who have you heard of that you like?
Yeah, I mean, there are loads, to be honest with you. A lot of content creation, certainly these days, is around. A lot of it is taking someone's idea or something that someone else has done and putting your own spin on it and making it relevant to you and your audience. So we do that with a lot of our content. Although we're specifically within EAFC, I'll watch a lot of videos and creators within other games and take kind of what they're doing and what's working well for them and try and bring it across to EAFC. That kind of gives us a bit of a different niche within that industry. That tends to happen a lot with creators. So it's a lot of kind of research. It's a lot of looking at what's trending. What if a creator's suddenly grown 100,000 followers in 6 months, then they're doing something right. So what can we learn kind of from what they're doing right? There's also probably the best example is probably the Sidemen and on how they've developed a community and then been able to monetize that and deliver brands off the community they've built is probably the best one that I can think of in terms of how a group of creators have managed to do that. And as you can see now, how big they are.
Yeah, I was following some people who were on who went to a conference in Austin. There was 4 of them, and those people know exactly who they are. And they, from a demographic perspective, they are not the Sidemen, but they did almost exactly what they like the Sidemen do in terms of like how they create content and like acted like as a foursome and kind of went all over socials. It was really cool to see, and I think that's probably the emerging trend, is that being able to craft content or leadership strategies that enable you to act as a group, but also act individually. Because obviously, you know, KSI has his own thing going on, but then the Sidemen have got their thing going on, and it just, like you say, it just works. And you know, if they were a leadership team with an organization, they'd absolutely be killing it, because they are each able to speak to completely different audiences and segments, but collectively still be able to come together and still have that unified voice, which is really interesting. We got one more comment from Denise, which I'm going to read out, and then I'm conscious that we're just about to hit the hour, so we might be able to just squeeze this in. Let's have a look. I think companies who use Teams tend to be the ones where the IT team has designed the solution. Perhaps HR need to take over designing solutions. Amen to that. Like, choosing Teams is a procurement-driven decision, not a people-driven solution. And we are all about human-centered design here at Freeformers. Hence why we figured out some of the pains people are having at work. We figured out what can we do to help get leaders better in the workplace. Like I say, we've designed this program. You can secure your place now for just a £50 deposit, and we will be able to help you leverage Chris Gara and the Gara Show, all of his insight, and bring that to your leadership techniques. Jake, I have talked a lot. You've talked a lot. It's been an hour. We're going to get out of here. Jake, thank you very much for joining us here at Freeformers. We're so excited about the potential of this partnership and what the stuff we can do together. But for now, thank you very much. I'm gonna kick you off.
Thank you. Good to be here.
See you later. See you later. So that is it. The end of our very first Freeformers stream. Kind of giving you a little bit more insight to what the Freeformers and 1J Esports partnership is all about. We are just starting this journey with them, and they've got so much amazing insight and intelligence and data and skills that no one is using inside the world of work. So we're super excited to bring that to anybody and anyone who wants to listen. So I'm here on LinkedIn pretty much all the time. I do a show called the HR Breakfast USA at 3:30 British summertime on a Monday. You can join me there with my friends Sam and Callie. We're also going to start a regular live stream here at Freeformers on a Thursday afternoon because, as you may have seen, we invented a deck of cards. And what we are going to do is we are going to play this game every Thursday here live on LinkedIn. So if you want to join me, I will pick one person, the first person who joins the stream on a Thursday afternoon. We will delve into the Freeformers deck of what-if cards that inspire conversation about employee experience, and we will have a conversation. So, for example, if today we were doing it, it would be this question. What if we stopped providing training for everyone and instead gave them a budget of £2,000 to spend on external training providers? What would that world look like? That's not for me to answer. That's for my guest to answer every Thursday here on Freeformers TV. That's not a thing. I just made that up. That's very 90s. We're not calling it that. For now, this is the end of the stream. I'm going to say goodbye. And if you're on catch up, also goodbye. It's just still the same thing.